Welcome back to Anigaze. We're diving into the next part of The Water Magician. If you're new here, this series breaks down the entire anime episode by episode, so you won't miss a single detail. If you missed the previous episode, don't worry, I've linked it in the description. Now let's jump straight into the recap.
Ryo hadn't visited the beach in a long time, but his craving for seafood finally pulled him back to the shore. While walking along the coastline, he stumbled across the remains of a wrecked boat, its shattered pieces scattered across the sand. Among the debris, he found an unconscious, injured man. Nearby, another survivor had also made it through the disaster. Soon, we see the memories of that survivor. His ship had been attacked by a massive sea monster, a giant octopus that left the vessel in ruins. Hours later, the young man woke up in an unfamiliar bed, his belongings neatly arranged around the room. After gathering his things, he stepped outside, confused about where he was. Ryo greeted him warmly as he exited the house, happy to see the man awake. The survivor, still on high alert, hadn't even noticed Ryo's presence before. Something about Ryo's appearance struck him as odd, especially his clothes. But feeling indebted, the man introduced himself as Abel and expressed his gratitude. Ryo downplayed it, saying he didn't do much, especially since none of the other survivors made it. Abel admitted that it was fine. They had only been smugglers anyway. That comment caught Ryo's interest, but before he could ask more, his stomach growled and they decided to continue the conversation over lunch. During the meal, Abel asked if Ryo had any extra clothes. Ryo explained he didn't. He lacked the materials and had no access to towns or shops. Abel assumed Ryo must have hunted the meat they were eating, and Ryo confirmed it. Abel guessed he used the knife on the table, but Ryo clarified it was mostly for cleaning meat or self-defense. For real strength, he relied on water magic. To demonstrate, Ryo simply said, "Water, be born," and filled a jug from thin air. Abel was impressed, noting that back in the central province, less than half the population could use magic like that. Ryo recalled that Miguel had told him it was actually under 20%, which made him feel slightly less special, but not enough to care deeply. Eventually, Abel asked to return to the spot where he had washed ashore. As they walked, he asked if Ryo used a staff like other mages. Ryo replied that he never had. After his earlier awkward comment about Ryo's clothes and now this, Abel felt like he kept putting his foot in his mouth. Wanting to contribute more, he offered to protect Ryo going forward. He didn't want to keep relying on him. It hurt his pride. He wanted to prove he could be strong too. When they reached the beach, Ryo explained that the other bodies had likely been taken by the sea or eaten. Abel was thankful to have survived. Ryo called him Mr. Abel and commented on his luck, but Abel insisted on just being called Abel. He preferred things informal, especially with someone who saved his life. Despite being older, Abel still felt comfortable with that dynamic. After searching the remains of the ship and failing to find what he was looking for, Abel decided his new goal was to reunite with his friends. To do that, he needed to travel north to the city of Lan. Ryo admitted he didn't know where Lan was, but figured heading north was the right move. Before setting off, Abel offered Ryo a deal. He'd pay him to be his guide, since Ryo was familiar with the area. Ryo agreed, and with a handshake, they formed a partnership. They would begin their journey the next morning. That evening, as Ryo looked over his crops, he reflected on his original desire to live a peaceful, simple life. But it seemed a new chapter was beginning. Later that night, he told Abel he had to step out and meet someone who could only be found at that hour. Abel was confused. Ryo had said there was no one else around, but chose not to question it. Ryo visited the Dullahan, the headless knight who had trained him, to let him know he'd be leaving the Rondo forest. He thanked the knight, acknowledging that without him, he never would have learned to survive. Since this was their final session, Ryo was determined to give it his all. Their sparring match began with renewed energy. Ryo's progress was clear. He had come a long way. Still, it was obvious the human would tire far faster than his immortal mentor, and eventually, he did. At the end of the match, the Dullahan conjured a magical orb of water from the river. Inside it was a set of clothes. Smiling gratefully, Ryo accepted the gift and promised to take good care of it. The Dullahan then turned and vanished into the night. By dawn, Abel was ready and found Ryo already waiting in his new cloak, prepared for the journey ahead. Before they left, Ryo took one last look at his home, already missing it, but excited to explore the world a bit more before returning to his peaceful life. Not long into their travels, they encountered a wild boar. Abel took charge, drew his sword, and activated a skill called Total Impalement, driving his blade straight through the beast. Impressed, Ryo asked about the technique. Abel explained that it was a combat skill, something only close-range fighters like swordsmen could use, not mages. That night, the two camped inside a hollow tree. At dawn, they resumed their journey. Before long, they noticed traces of the lizard folks. Knowing the swamp gave those creatures the upper hand, Abel recommended avoiding them. But despite their efforts, Ryo sensed they were being tracked. It was clear they'd have to fight. Abel was concerned. Ryo was a mage without a staff. But to his surprise, Ryo handled the threat with ease, launching ice spears that struck down several enemies. After they dealt with the rest, Abel asked about the spell Ryo had used. Ryo downplayed it, saying it was just a basic water spell. Still, Abel was impressed. Ryo had conjured 4 spears at once, something unusual. Most mages only manage 1 per cast. At least that's what a wind mage Abel once knew had said. Ryo suggested maybe water magic worked differently, but Abel didn't dwell on it. Before moving on, Ryo summoned 2 glasses of water with ice for them to drink. Abel recalled that last time, Ryo had spoken a chant to do the same. This time, he said, "Cup arise, water, come forth." When questioned, Ryo just laughed it off, joking that Abel must have imagined things. As they continued walking, Abel showed Ryo a bronze florin, a coin from the Kingdom of Nightly, where the city of Lan was located. He explained that in the central provinces, each nation had its own currency, but all were equally valued. Nightly was one of 3 major nations in the region, alongside the Debui Empire and the Handelu Federation. Ryo found Debui a silly name and teased Abel, saying he'd be embarrassed to say, "Hi, I'm from Debui." Suddenly, rocks shifted along their path. Abel reacted quickly, slicing one that came flying at him, while Ryo erected an ice wall to block others. Abel realized they had entered a stone golem nest. Ryo had always imagined golems to be humanoid, but these weren't. Abel tried using his Total Impalement attack, but the hole he made instantly sealed up. Thinking fast, Ryo created a massive 10-layered ice wall and brought it crashing down like a slab, crushing most of the golems. After the fight, they noticed one golem hadn't moved. Ryo guessed that golems absorb energy from the ground, and this one might have run out. At its core was a large, vibrant magic stone. Abel figured it had probably defeated countless enemies over the years. Either way, they claimed it as loot since the others were buried under ice. A few hours later, they spotted what Abel thought was a behemoth. Wyverns flew overhead, preparing to strike. The two decided to watch. Abel believed the giant beast would lose, but Ryo had faith. The wyverns attacked from above, but the behemoth let out a thunderous roar, knocking them from the sky. Abel was stunned. Ryo guessed it was some kind of magic nullification. That night, after setting up camp, Ryo joked about wanting to see Abel go up against the behemoth. The thought gave Abel chills. He admitted he'd never heard of magic nullification before, though he knew about dungeon traps that could block spells. Ryo perked up at the word dungeon, saying he'd love to explore one. Abel mentioned there was only one dungeon in the central provinces, located in Lan, their destination. Ryo accused him of keeping that fact a secret, but Abel claimed he didn't know Ryo was into that kind of adventure. Since Ryo was in the mood for stories, Abel talked about the other races, dwarves and elves. Dwarves, he said, were expert smiths and great fighters. Some even lived in Lan. As for elves, he believed only one lived in the city, since most stayed deep in the forests. Ryo found that description spot on, but avoided answering when asked how he knew so much. The next morning, they resumed their trek. Ryo noted that once they crossed the mountains, they'd be near human lands. Curious, Abel asked again how he knew all this. Ryo remembered something Lewin, the red dragon, had told him. The land was bordered by sea on 3 sides, with mountains in the north that cut it off from the next continent. So it was unlikely that humans crossed the mountains. Rather than explain more, Ryo vaguely called it knowledge beyond human reach, which only annoyed Abel further. Realizing he'd get no answers, Abel let it go. As they traveled, a griffin swooped down from the sky. Abel froze in panic, so Ryo tossed him a chunk of meat to offer the beast. The griffin, satisfied with the food, flew off. Only then did the two breathe a sigh of relief and finally take a bathroom break. Later, as they hiked through the cold mountain air, they revisited the griffin encounter. Both admitted they would have likely been eaten if not for the meat. Abel remarked that creatures like behemoths and griffins hadn't been seen for centuries. Clearly, something was off about this place. But Ryo disagreed, saying maybe humans just weren't trying hard enough. Abel remains firm in his belief that the mountains have kept powerful creatures like behemoths and griffins from entering human territories. This leads Ryo to wonder if the wyverns they encountered had flown in from the north, a possibility with concerning implications. As they continue their journey, the two stumble upon more wyverns feasting on an unfortunate animal. Ryo asks if it's time to engage, but Abel knows better. These monsters are far above their skill level. Normally, it would take 20 experienced adventurers to bring down just one wyvern, and even then there are casualties. Ryo, sensing that more of them could be nearby, suggests that they might be forced into a fight soon. He proposes they take the initiative now, especially since the wyverns are grounded. Acting fast, he immobilizes their wings with 4 ice spears. Abel seizes the opportunity, charging in to finish the job. But there's no time to relax. 2 more wyverns suddenly dive from the skies. Ryo reacts swiftly, blasting them with ice magic that sends them crashing to the ground. Abel follows up with the final blow, ending the threat. Afterward, he retrieves a magic core from one of the wyverns and admits he's shocked by how smoothly the fight went. Their morale is lifted. They've proven they can defeat wyverns. So, when another group appears in the distance, Abel confidently states they'll take them down if challenged. The journey continues, and eventually, the duo reaches the summit of one of the northernmost mountains. From the edge, they admire the vast, breathtaking view, knowing this is just the beginning of their adventure. If you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to subscribe and check out more videos here.